Welcome to Girl on the Gov, the podcast, breaking down politics as we know it and removing all the bullshit.
Because politics needed a rebrand. I know we're back for another episode, and I have been dying to spill this new thing for the last. It's probably not new for like anyone else but me, who just hasn't been in a Trader Joe's in way too long. But literally, have you tried? And I can't. Oh wait, I'm like getting all amped here. This is a word I can't pronounce, so LOL to me. Cacio e pepe. Oh my god, I got it.
Yeah.
The puffs. Have you had the puffs?
No. What, like they're sour cream and onion ones? That are like, but they're have like, that flavor?
I don't know if I've had those because that's like, I'm like weird with sour cream. I don't know. I'm not a sour cream
But they're
fan.
like those like
I know,
just puffy, like weird snacks. They make cacio e pepe flavor.
And they are so fucking good.
And
they're organic. So
we love
add that to the list. I literally am addicted. It's fine. I have been dying to tell everyone about this in the last 24 hours and basically have counted down the moments
Trader Joe's
to now.
Interesting. Okay, I need to go to Trader Joe's anyways and get some fresh groceries.
Some
fresh.
You know what that just sounded like?
Groceries? Now I don't know how I say groceries. That's how I say it.
Wait, groceries. Is that one of those ones that has like a regional difference, like water?
Yeah, I think some people say groceries, some people say groceries. I say groceries.
Okay, now I'm gonna be on. I was gonna say the lookout, but I can't really look for a sound. But I'm gonna be on the ears out. That's not a thing either. What is?
But what I don't know.
Is that?
I don't know. But what I was trying to say is that I'm trying to get my life together this week because I just had a 3-day bender and I haven't done this in a while, and I just, as you can probably hear, like I'm unwell, and I feel like I'm like not on this planet.
Someone get this girl liquid IV.
I know, I felt that way yesterday, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna get a good night's sleep and wake up, and I'm gonna ready to take on the week. And I just I'm so out of it. I'm like groggy, Like I feel fine, but I'm just like groggy. It's just, I don't know. Welcome to 26 is all I can tell you. System. But yeah, big detox week. But another big week politically. Cause
I know we always make this joke, specifically when we're on pitch calls. I swear to God, it's become my new gerrymandering throwdown. But of us having jobs until we're 5 gazillion years old, because there is never a dull moment or issue not to cover in politics.
Never.
And I say that like Bible for sure every time that comes up, but I just felt that more and more and more as the news stories roll in. There's never a quiet day in politics anymore.
Especially
like I feel
the
like
past few
they're
weeks.
And what like really framed that for me a little bit was, like obviously the concept of like a lame duck session, which is like what Congress will apparently head into in the fall. But like also, guys, get your shit together and do something. Thanks. Like don't be lame ducks. Great.
Well, it's like
but,
their sessions can be on pause, but the news never is. And especially if when they're in session, nothing's really happening. Then when they go on recess and then the news that we want them to address and fix keeps happening, aka mass shootings, you're like, how are you possibly on recess right now? It's crazy.
But no, and I do love at the state level, I mean this happens federally too, but especially at the state level, special sessions or extraordinary sessions apparently is like another term for it.
Yep.
Which is so funny to me because it's like extraordinary session. Like now every time I see a Politico being like, we just had this from the extraordinary session. And I'm like,
of course they had to make it like dramatic.
LOL. So dramatic. I feel like that's a phrase that a grandpa uses to describe an ice cream flavor. The strawberry ice cream was extraordinary. Like that is how I hear that in my head.
Who are electeds? Our grandfathers.
Oh, right. Yep.
That checks.
Yo, grandpas.
But no, it was 4th of July weekend, and to me, there's just nothing more embarrassing than celebrating 4th of July. I felt this way. I felt this way for years. I'm like, you'll never catch me wearing an American flag t-shirt, posting an American flag.
Look,
it was my friend's birthday this weekend. That's why I had a bender. I was like, what's the 4th of July? What is that?
Yeah. Agreed some more. And my point 2, am I doing numbers or letters? I already forgot because that's how bad my ADHD is today. But I will say, like, the only reason I feel like I ever do things for it or have traditionally is like not like a celebration of the 4th of July of just being, oh, it's a summer day off. Like it's like,
I posted,
it's like, okay, cool, we can all get together in this summer and we're all happen to be off. And obviously that doesn't include every element of the workforce, but just like commonly has been like a time that friends can actually get together and have common time off. Yeah. But like the actuality of celebrating America.
No, it was a great weekend of just summer vibes.
It's also kind of like a creepy concept in general. Like I felt like this way for a long time with like a lot of federal type holidays where it's like, what? It just feels like kind of nationalist and weird.
No, it's again just like stupid. It's stupid. It's so stupid. But no, it's just the summer vibes are immaculate. I was like on a lake barbecuing and I had sparklers and like that's what I love, but it wasn't me celebrating the birthday of this country. So yeah, I mean it's similar to like Thanksgiving, you know, where it's like I'm not celebrating like the Pilgrims, you know, I'm just I like to eat with my family once a year and eat that specific food, and it's just what's become. But I did see many stories of white men on my Instagram chanting USA. It's just that type of stuff is where I'm like, you're an embarrassment. And I did also get mansplained to me once or twice this weekend that like I still should be really, you know, grateful for what this country gives me and the freedoms that we have. It's just I got mansplained to a few times and I was like, don't talk to me.
Oh, that sounds like brutally painful and
our 4th of July
never going in the right direction. But anyways, we hope that this particular episode takes us in the right direction because our conversation absolutely gives like, is it the P's and the Q's? The T's and the I's.
I'm not sure. I don't know what any of those things mean.
Okay, the 411, because I do know what 411 means. We're going to stick with 411 these days. So anyways, gives the 411 on the inner workings of campaigns. We talk about getting involved with campaigns you're interested in to like literally until the cows come home. We love a political career moment, but we realized that we have forgotten a few things in those conversations, aka giving the explainers as to what the roles on campaigns are, what they actually do, how to get into them. And so we brought on someone super special, super amazing, super genius in this space to walk us through it all and just literally, again, another episode, an interview where we could have spoken for hours and I would have been very happy human. Nonetheless, there will be a part 2 at a later date, so stay tuned. But this particular episode is with our friend. Am I okay? Friend. Yeehaw. Can you imagine me in a cowboy hat?
I was in a cowboy hat all weekend.
See, you pull that off. You know my thoughts on hats on me.
Liberal cowgirl.
Circling
can we
out of our cowgirl brainstorm. We will get to this guest. Drisana Hughes, political strategist, campaign genius. Genius. She knows how to make shit happen. We obviously had to speak with her on all things campaign, what all the roles are doing, like we said. So we'll get into it. Without further ado, here's Drisana. First things first, like the run of show, like how'd you get into politics? Like where did this really begin before we, of course, get into all the questions of what does a campaign strategist do? You know, what's the day-to-day, all of that? How'd you get here in the first place?
Yeah, so I think I've always been interested in politics. Like, I ran for student government when I was 8, you know, like,
wow.
I've always had that bug, but didn't really know professionally what that looked like for a really long time. So I hope for people listening to this who have a little bit of interest, it should be helpful to know that, like, even I, as a very, very interested 4-year-old, like, this was a long time coming. The industry isn't as easy to figure out where you're going as others. But the first time I volunteered was for Obama's campaign when I was 12 years old. And then I volunteered a lot in college. And then I'd say the first time I got paid for political work, I was about 24 years old, working in a nonprofit. And the first time I got paid to do a campaign was Joe Biden's campaign in 2020.
Wow. It's so funny. Like, we talk about this all the time and both have experience with just, like you said, it's really so hard to get your foot in the door in the political space if you want to work here. And like the fact that you've been volunteering since you're literally like an infant and you still like didn't get paid till you're 24, like that's just crazy. But I'm sure we'll like dive into that more. We won't start the tangents quite yet. But
Tame the tangents.
Yeah, taming the tangents for now, tabling. But we want to get into too, like what a day in the life looks like on a campaign and like what that typically looks like. Is it different every day? Can you kind of walk us through like the craziness of a campaign life?
Yeah, so I mean, goes without saying, every day is different, but the way I would divide it for someone looking in is proximity to election day is definitely how I would divide your experience.
Totally.
From the people who are like, the first time a candidate raises their hand and is like, okay, you know, I think I'm going to do this, I'm going to run for office. Those days are very different from when you finally have hired a full team. Those days are very different from, you know, 2 to 3 months out. And those days are very different from GOTV, which is like the last 2 to 3 weeks before election day. And so proximity to the day really affects what you're doing, whether you're doing more strategy and planning in the beginning and then at the end, just like rapid response, intense response, execution. Those things vary by how close you are to election day.
Yeah, totally. When I worked on the presidential campaign in the primaries in 2020, when I first started, it was like pretty early on. And so literally like I would roll in at like 10. I would, you know, maybe leave around like 3. It was great. I was like, this is the life.
Yeah, you're like,
and then 2 months before election day, literally was working 7 days a week, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Just like crazy. So I totally feel that.
A whirlwind. Also, very much side note, but for some reason, GOTV and IGTV, those two things switch in my head all the times. And literally the amount of people that I have said, oh my God, it's IGTV time too.
Like,
bad. Like really bad. And then switched it. Like, I know I'm a little dyslexic, but like phrases, the fact that it's gone to phrases, it's like really ridiculous, but it's a classic mix up for me.
And like, not to go on a little tangent on that, but like something people talk about, I see on Twitter all the time, is all of the acronyms used in this space and how it's such a barrier to entry for someone coming in who doesn't know what P2P, GOTV, EV, EJ, and it like makes it very, very hard. Like when I first started working and learning the systems, it was like it was almost like learning a programming language or something completely different. And so you can be politically engaged and active and feel so unable to enter the space because it's
such an interesting point too, because I feel like even like when I hear my friends talk about their work, or like, you know, my roommate, she's like in the corporate world, tech space, and like when I'm with her coworkers and friends and they're talking about work and they have all their acronyms, I'm like, obviously I'm not going to understand those, but the fact that like politics is like public facing space, like everyone needs to understand. And that's so true. Like the acronyms, how like those still aren't translated, even though everyone does need to know what they mean. It's not like some corporate jargon that like you don't ever deal with. So yeah, the barriers to entry are endless. We can probably, that's a tangent for days and days.
Literally, I see the merch item that we were designing that had an acronym on it. That is getting nixed immediately. This was a great editing process. Thank you, everyone.
Just a little focus group moment.
Nonetheless. Yeah. We do want to talk about the many roles within the campaign space, and one of them is deputy campaign manager. It's one we see a lot when we're reaching out to campaigns and trying to figure out, okay, who do we want to contact to, you know, talk about a campaign, get someone on the show, all of that stuff. But like, what does that role specifically entail? Do they have a different day-to-day than a regular campaign manager? Like, where does that differ?
Yeah, so I was a deputy campaign manager before I was a campaign manager, and I'm really happy I went in that order for a lot of reasons. The campaign manager is definitely responsible for the direction and management of the campaign as a whole. And then as a deputy campaign manager, you know, you're supporting that person. So in that first role, I wasn't making the big decisions about how to steer the ship. But once those decisions were made, I was very integral, sometimes completely in charge myself of executing it. So I learned a lot about how you manage a campaign, how your decisions trickle down to the staff without having the pressure of being the person who was doing it all first.
Yeah.
And that was really, really great experience. And then when it did come time for me to be a campaign manager and have to make those decisions myself, it wasn't so daunting. It wasn't so scary. I wouldn't say that's everyone's experience. A lot of people jump right into campaign management immediately and they do really well. But I'm definitely happy that I was able to just do the execution and operations first before I was responsible for like real strategy and management.
Totally. Because then you're literally on the ground seeing if something works or not, but also you don't get like stuck in the crossfire if it doesn't.
Yes.
And I think it can sometimes be at the top like a very, and this is not just in politics, but a very lonely place because you are making these decisions at rapid fire. You're praying, even if you are the best expert in whatever you're doing, that they work and that, you know, it doesn't come back to bite you in the ass. And let me tell you, I have many an experience in something coming back to bite me in the ass and getting yelled at by God knows how many people. So like, it's like you want to make those decisions and you become very, you know, I feel like in any spot, strategic as to knowing what's going to work or what's worth the risk and what's not, because you become risk managers in a certain sense. But like, it's still really scary. I don't feel like people talk about that enough. I really don't.
Risk management, you're right, is an absolute, I'd say, top 5 part of the job that you're doing. And I also think that you can be a really, really great campaign manager, but if you don't get along with your candidate, it doesn't really matter, because at the end of the day, you're asking that person to get on TV, to work a little longer, to knock a little more doors, to raise a little more money. And you guys really have to have a tight relationship because, you know, this is probably going to be the biggest suck on this person's life for that, whatever, 8 to months you're working together. And so the relationship you have with the person is also critical.
Yeah, that's such an interesting angle. Yeah, I was going to say, can you kind of highlight that candidate to campaign manager dynamic and relationship and like, you know, who really wears the pants, who's making the decisions, is, you know, who's really like the CEO of the campaign? Is it the candidate? Is it the campaign manager? Like, how do those relationships typically play out?
Yeah, so it's definitely a case-by-case basis on the race and the candidate. Like, I had a very good experience. India is one of my best friends still to this day. We had very good rapport with each other. And so she really trusted me to make really big decisions. And she gave me a lot of agency and power and autonomy. And that I really, really appreciate. It's really hard to trust someone with your name and your likeness and your career. And so we had a very good rapport and respect. And then sometimes when India, you know, who was a single mother of 4 and was out of work while she was running for office, is like, Drisana, like, I can't do this today. I would step up and I would do it, or someone else would do it. We were not adversarial. Yeah. But that's not always true. And sometimes the best campaign managers push you till you win and you don't want to be their friend anymore. Won, and that was their job. So everyone has their own style about going about it. I'm very interested in developing a co-leadership model with the candidate, a good relationship with the candidate. I want this to transcend. I want this to transcend the campaign. As someone who's now a campaign strategist, you know, I want these relationships to stay with me forever. If India needs someone in the future, I hope, you know, she'll call me back because she had a good experience. So I care more than just the campaign. But at the end of the day, we're there to win. So it's an interesting dynamic.
Super interesting.
That is, it's kind of like a coach, you know? And like, I feel like over the years, I've had coaches I've hated, like one that thought I was someone else, very rude, still bitter about it. How many years later? It's fine. There could be more than one blonde. Jesus Christ. Anyways, and then others were like, oh my gosh, you're an inspiration. Like, yes, that sucked that you made me do these extra sprints, but it was worth it. And I respect that. So I feel like that gives like a little bit of a comparison for any of our sports girlies that are listening. I feel like that's really similar.
Yeah, I think sports comparison is very true. Like, I really do, because you talk to people on like the winning Chicago Bulls, right? And they're like, Michael Jordan and Phil Jackson got along with each other, but like some of the people, no one wants to talk to Michael Jordan. They hate Michael Jordan, but they won 6 rings. So it's like, it's fine. But there was a lot of drama and bad blood.
It's like Tom Brady.
Yep. And it's like, so, you know, those, it takes a specific person to want to jump into that.
Yeah, totally. And I think too, like, some of these really big campaigns with the name recognition of like the Bernie Sanders of the world, when they do have a campaign and like get their campaign manager, I feel like it's like a circulating just roster of campaign managers who have the experience and the wins, and it's just like you're not picking them for like that relationship or maybe even friendship that like you value in the work you do. Yep. But like I feel like when you do get like much higher into these really big name politicians, it's like more about like who's won the most campaigns. Like look at like the Trump campaign or the Trump administration and just the people that were around him and like the stories that have come out since of like how they all just like were not on the same page and just like all of that.
It comes down to what brings you to this work. Like
exactly.
I loved every single person I've worked with. I really truly have. And there have been pain points, but like I will not work for like that's my line. There's no amount of money, there's no amount of winning that would make me day in and day out, hours and hours and hours with someone that
I can't believe people do that. But tangent aside, moving to just really quick, like you have this also like volunteer experience on your resume that like really brought you into this work. Can you kind of give our listeners too that are interested in working in campaigns or volunteering really what type of training they can expect to get by volunteering and like what opportunities can arise from that, and if you have any advice for taking that like volunteer first route to get your foot in the door?
Yeah, I love volunteering. I still volunteer no matter how much I get paid, no matter how high up I go. I will always knock a door or make a phone call. I feel very, very passionately about that. I think that it really grounds you and it gives you all these other skills that I didn't realize I was getting. Like when you have to talk to strangers at a young age, that helps you when you go into an interview in college, that helps you when you're debating, anyone wants to go into that. It just makes you an impressive speaker and it helps you develop some of those skill sets. So I do think talking and engaging with strangers really is a good activity that we should do regularly to keep us sharp on our general functioning in the world. I do think where you volunteer is really important. I'm no stranger to a ton of horror stories and bad experience. So here's what I will say. If you're volunteering for the first time, it's definitely cool to talk to someone on the phone first before you go. Whether that's a field director or a volunteer coordinator, someone should be able to pick up the phone, talk to you, introduce themselves, and let you know like what's going to go down. I've heard horror story people showing up to street corners, no one's there. People showing up to stuff, you're alone. They just send you an app and they tell you to do this activity with no materials, with no support. You should never not be supported in this activity. But even though it's a little scary to take your first leap, you should really ask professionals, ask that other people, lean on other people around you. That will help make sure your first experience is a good one. And I think a lot of people don't do that. They just show up and they're like, So yeah, like call the coordinator first, ask what's going to go down for anything that you're interested in signing up for.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. What do you advise for anyone that like, say it's their first time knocking doors and they feel like they walked away from a few conversations. They're kind of like, oh, fuck, like, what did I say? That was just so awkward, or oh my God, I messed up. Like anything that would make them feel like what are the takeaways, directions from like that sort of situation?
Yeah, well, first I just want to name like the experience isn't the same for everyone based on some of our like born characteristics. Like I am a single woman of color when I go to knock doors late at night. Like that's scary. That's weird. I've been followed before. So like those kinds of things you should take very seriously with yourself. And if you're uncomfortable one day, you want to go home early, or you don't want to volunteer one day, like that's okay. But things that we shouldn't get discouraged by, which are like bad conversations, awkward conversations, people who tell you to, get off my lawn, that kind of thing. The one thing that I will say that will help you push past that is to literally just keep going, because you're going to have a good conversation one day and it's really gonna remind you why you're doing this. I was volunteering a few days ago for a big criminal justice reform candidate, and someone approached me like, does this person want to defund the police? I'm very scared. Like, I don't want to vote for them. And we talked for 45 minutes about really real, just like real stuff, like down to brass tacks. And I was like, yo, that felt like taking a clean shower and drinking some seltzer water. And it felt like really, really good to talk to someone about their issues, and they ended up going in and voting for my candidate, even though they were like a little scared before. So There's only, for every bad experience you have, you'll have a good one too. And so just not counting yourself out the first time something bad happens and just trying to push past it.
Yeah, I would also say too, especially like when it comes to phone banking, when you're like on a phone bank and like there's hundreds of calls like coming in and out and you're just going so fast, like we would always tell our volunteers too, like they would be so discouraged because they're like, I just got like 10 Trump voters in a row. Like what the hell? And it's like, no, like the other thing that's really important to note is that the data is so helpful for campaigns, and like to be able to identify voters in a certain way really helps the campaign narrow down their search, narrow down like their efforts, and like just that data alone does so much. And so again, sometimes it's not even about like you convincing somebody to vote a certain way. It's sometimes just about, you know, doing that work and getting the data that the campaign needs to like, you know, narrow in their strategy and such. So that's kind of what we would always push through too. But also love the, you know, sentiment about how it is such a good life skill. And like we always talk to like say to our followers too, you know, some people, everyone has like their different ways in which they want to get involved politically, be it protesting or phone banking, or maybe they don't want a phone bank and they want to, you know, email, or, you know, everyone has their own lane. But it really is true, like phone banking, it kind of, you just got to rip the Band-Aid off and like just have those conversations, because I think that's such a good point that like it's just really also a really great life skill, as like sometimes like weird and like awkward as it can be, like it is going to be helpful regardless. But anyways, moving forward to I Have a Stupid Question segment, we want to get into some other roles in the political space that you specifically to have some experience in. We want to ask what the difference between a campaign strategist and a political consultant is.
It's a really good question. And honestly, like the simple answer is like people call themselves what they call themselves, and then it will vary. But I'll say like the technical, as I feel, the technical difference, political consultants, that covers a wide variety. They could be a field consultant, they could be a communications consultant, they could be your fundraising consultant, they could do all three. They could be your strategy consultant. Like they could literally coordinate volunteers, but they're calling themselves a political consultant. So that is really wide category. You have to drill down on what that person's good at. Campaign strategists are helping you with the strategy related to your campaign. So they can do some of those things, but I would say that person is trying to signal with their title that they can help you make some big decisions about the direction of your campaign, who you're going to hire, what policy stances you're going to take if you haven't figured it out yet, how much money you're going to pour into this or that. And so consultants can do that too, but strategists, like in the title, is saying, I want to help you with the big problems that you're going to have in your campaign, and maybe not the smaller stuff. But consultants can help you with the big, the small, the up, the down, the right, the left. And I found both of them. I found people go by both of those names or one of those names. Some campaigns hire both. So very.
Yeah.
It is so funny. Like, there are so many titles that feel like they're like pretty similar, like in any industry. And I always get like so confused on LinkedIn where I'll be like, okay, like what does that mean? Like, is an account manager the same thing as an account director somewhere else? Or like whatever the position is.
Executive.
I'm like, someone tell me. Like, I don't know how we figure it out and like put it like a little bit clearer for everyone, but that was very helpful in terms of figuring out these two. Those are going to be two definitions on our list that we go by. So thank you for that. I also want to touch on one of the terms within the campaign field that we hear a lot, but a lot of people are sort of like, what is it? And that is, what is canvassing?
Very good question. I also didn't know what it was for an extremely long time. And so there's lots of different like canvassing you can do, right? Like door-to-door canvassing, relational canvassing. At the end of the day, it means you're going through a group with a particular message. If you're doing that, like that's how I would overarch it, because you can canvas for campaigns, but you can canvas for issues. You can canvas on behalf of, you can survey people, but you're going through a group with a goal. So with a campaign, I'm canvassing, I'm going through a group, usually a neighborhood, door to door, to let them know there's an election coming up and to get them to vote for my person. If I'm doing a relational canvas, the fancy way that we call basically going through your friends or your address book in your phone and telling your friends to do something, to donate, to vote, to join your whatever, etc. I would consider phone banks canvases via phone. I would consider text banks canvases via text. I would consider anything where you're reaching out to a group of people with a particular goal in mind a canvas.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Okay, so
Got
not
it.
something we paint on. Noted.
Yeah.
All those details. Okay, one more role under this category that we're like, I think we know what it means, but, love a little clarity moment. What does a campaign scheduler do?
I think it's the hardest job on a campaign. I've been like a de facto scheduler. Like even when I have the most fanciest title in the world, like campaign strategist, consultant, political, like I am a scheduler. And I think it's the most important because it's where, at the end of the day, it's where you're devoting your time with your candidate. So the campaign scheduler, in the most simplest of sense, is scheduling the candidate's day-to-day. But the reason it's so hectic, it's like how I would imagine it. Like it's very funny. It's a completely different industry, but it kind of gives me like Anne Hathaway and Devil Wears Prada vibes.
Yeah.
Like, get the Harry Potter manuscript before it comes out, like that kind of stuff. You have to do constantly. Like, find me a church to talk at tomorrow with a congregation of 200 people that are all voters. Okay, like find me a block party for the 4th of July that I can go to. Find me this, find me that. Do it quickly, do it tomorrow, and don't piss off the other people, but don't piss off your candidate. It's like very, very multifaceted, ever-changing role. I think anyone who gets an opportunity to do it young as a way to put your foot in the door, it's an incredible experience. You get access to almost every part of the campaign and everyone, but you don't sleep. You don't. Yeah. It's just like those things.
Totally.
Okay, so
we actually were talking about
Insomniacs,
this.
here you go.
Yeah, we were
Like,
talking
this is
about
a
this
job
the
for
other day.
Insomniacs.
Just campaign schedulers, even beyond like when a candidate gets into office and like the schedulers there too, like they really do have so much power in deciding where a candidate or an elected is spending their time. And I've had friends who worked on that on a campaign, and it's like don't sleep, first of all. But you also are the other kind of like amazing experience you get is that you get to be like really close to the candidate and spend time with them, like, have that connection as well. And, hopefully that comes to fruition and gets you more, experience as well. But no, we were talking about this the other day. Schedulers like have a lot of power too. Got to get in the door with the schedulers.
Never want to pick them off because it doesn't matter how and I remember everyone who's treated me poorly in that role of like, oh, you're unimportant. You're not India Walton. You're not Alvin Bragg. You're not Scott Stringer. I could treat you a certain way. Yeah. And that's a mistake.
Right.
Because all of those people cared about how I was treated, and it will affect how they move around you. And I think it tells so much about you as a candidate, as an elected official, as a public official, how you treat the lowest person on the totem pole.
Yeah. It's like not, it's like an executive assistant, but not, it's like beyond that. And it has like way more power than like that type of role would in any other industry, which is really just an interesting part of the campaign world.
Okay, so we want to talk about campaigns overall, like disconnect between so many of them. It feels like there's these federal campaigns that get so much money, so much attention. Everyone's eyes are on, like, I feel like Amy McGrath is always the example that comes to my head of like, oh my God, we gotta have Amy win. And don't get me wrong, want her to win, for sure. But like, that was so disconnected from then the state races and everything else, and it seems like money put in the wrong place and all of that. And I'm so curious to know, like, from your perspective, why there's such a disconnect between all eyes on federal and then state and local races that are in my eyes, so much more important.
Yeah. No, it's a great question. It's something we as a country are going to have to come to grips with super soon in 2022 and then really in 2024. I think national coordination is incredibly important, especially as we look at what's happening with the Supreme Court. Federal elections, midterm elections are very important, no doubt about it. They need a lot more money, no doubt about it. You have to run commercials statewide. That's incredibly expensive. And so I do understand why there's a focus on those. My first really, really real political job was on a presidential, and I think that has patterned the seriousness with which I approach my state and local jobs. Yeah. So I do think they're important, and I don't want to downplay that at all. However, one of the reasons that they flounder or not, seemingly in a very confusing way. So the Amy situation, right? No one had more money. No one had more money than her. And I think it's a great one to raise. But why they seemingly, it's like, what's going on here is because they can get very quickly disconnected from the constituents that they're supposed to represent. Because you have to scale so quickly, presidential and state races, you'll hire people from out of state.
Yeah.
So what happens is you'll have organizers in Kentucky, you know, talking to people about issues in Kentucky, and they're from New Jersey. And it's very clear. And that's why they lose sometimes. That's not the only reason, but you get disconnected very quickly. Local and state, you don't have that much money. The people who you can hire are probably from where you are running your campaign. They're probably way more connected to the community. And that way, those battles can be a little more egalitarian. It can be a little more like who out hustles the other person, because you're fighting with some of the same resources. Now, you can still be outspent, which we've just seen literally a few days ago with the assembly races in New York. But I think national, they have to, it's like a startup. That's how I explained it to my father, who's like, knows nothing about politics, but is in finance. It's like if you were starting a company overnight and you needed 100 employees tomorrow, would they all be like the perfect employees from the city you want, be able to do it? No, like you take people from away. Yeah. So you end up staffing things differently, and I think the effectiveness of them is different as a result.
I love that analogy. I also just feel like business analogies are ones that people really relate to, and really like it's the way they can like grasp things. So I think that's an important one people should take and like reiterate when thinking about politics. I also am curious from like a voter perspective. Voter meets canvassing, meets campaigns, all of that. In conversations that you've had with people, no matter which campaign it's been on, well, let's nix the Obama one in this one, state, local, etc. What has been like the feedback? Like, have you heard anyone be like, oh, I didn't know that like this position existed, or oh my gosh, I didn't know that we had local elections, or like anything like that that's sort of like telling in some way?
Yeah, and people don't like to admit this, but like I'll admit it that I was part of that group for a very long time. I didn't vote in my local elections. I didn't know they were happening. I would see posters everywhere. And I'm talking like 18 to 23. Like I would see posters everywhere. I would see that it was going on, but I didn't really know what it was. And I didn't really definitely didn't think it was important enough to like drop what I was doing research, who my town supervisor is or whatever.
Right.
And we had a lot of that feedback. I mean, we had record low turnout this past Tuesday in New York State because people are tired and they don't know what assembly means. And I've heard people say that to me. So I think that that's very common. I don't think there should be judgment around that. I think we should meet that where they are, try to understand why people feel. I can't tell you how many times I heard on Tuesday, they're all the same. They're all the same. I'm out here screaming for my one candidate who I feel like is not the same. And being told they're all the same. And it's like, very, very sad conversation to have. And so we need to do a better job of putting people into office who are not the same. So you kind of pay attention to Donald Trump, for better or for worse, did a very good job of that, because people were like, oh, okay, this is what it's like to have a president like this. This is now maybe I should vote for the president. This is a very different experience for me.
Yeah.
And we need to put local and state officials there who are clearly drawing attention to their role, what they can do, affecting your day-to-day life, so you feel like you should vote for that job again.
No, totally.
1,000%.
I think it started too in like 2020 with just COVID, and people realizing like, oh shit, like my county supervisors are like determining like what I'm allowed to do in my day-to-day. Like, so it really sometimes unfortunately takes really hard times or shitty news or whatever to wake people up and be like, oh god, I have to pay attention or learn about this. And it is hard, and like we always say, like it's never too late to start learning, and it's really not people's fault. Like it's intentionally made so hard to understand, and there is so much to learn. I mean, we're still learning so much, and like being in the political space, and like recently had Attorney General Dan Nestle on, and I'm like, I learned so much about that role I had like literally had no idea about.
Agreed. Okay, we are taking this to a different bucket, and it is the voting bucket. There, I feel like are so many conversations. I'm going to just raise all of our hands on this one. Conversations we've had where someone's like, my vote doesn't matter. It doesn't count. Like, why am I showing up? Blue states, red states, heard it all the same. And the question kind of has been, like, is it the way in which our voting system works? Is it, you know, some of the larger systems in place? Like, what do you feel like it is? And if there is sort of a voting mechanism that you feel like is better, what is that? What does that look like?
Yeah, so I actually got started working on the ranked choice voting campaign for New York that we just passed, and then we had RCV for the city council. I'm also a fan of approval voting, which is a slightly different deviation from that. And there's a woman named Catherine Gale, who I'm a huge fan of, who has she has a book called The Politics Industry, where she talks about her method of voting, which involves ranking candidates and having open primaries. There's a whole industry around how our electoral system really disenfranchises people. Like, you have primaries where only registered Democrats can choose the candidate, and then you have all these independents who show up in November and they're like,
yeah,
how was I, like, my opinion was not taken into account. I believe very strongly that electoral reforms are incredibly important. And I'm very thankful for people doing that nonpartisan work, which is, I'm not advocating for Republican stuff or Democratic stuff. I'm just here to say the way we're voting is wrong. And I think that's really important work. I think the Electoral College is old and antiquated, and we need to do away with it. I think all of those things. I caution into getting too far into that rabbit hole sometimes, because I still think people should vote. And I still think if you're slightly values aligned with Democrats, it's good to have a voice in the primary system as long as it exists. And so I struggle with that. Like, I don't want to be part of encouraging a system that I know is not 100% representative and disenfranchises constituents. But then it gets around to primary election time, and like, I want to vote for I want to make sure my elected official is the elected official I want to be, like, so I'm gonna take part in it. And, you know, I think RCV in New York City, I'm a big fan of it. I think there's more to be done to make it better, but I supported having it. Ranked choice voting is in, I believe, 18 localities and 2 states all the way across the United States, and in way, way, way more villages and towns. So people are picking it up in conservative and liberal places. But just because our voting system isn't perfect and it's a little rigged doesn't mean you shouldn't vote.
Absolutely. Yeah. I know.
Amen.
There's just so much fucking work to be done and things to fix. But to kind of switch gears once again, and to also kind of wrap up, I want to talk about how you are an MPP candidate at Harvard Kennedy School, which is Master's of Public Policy. What are you going to be focusing on here? Can you kind of explain, like, this route for you and, like, what it means and what you hope to achieve out of it?
Yeah, so I am starting, like, now-ish, which is really, really exciting. I'm also a fellow with the Center for Public Leadership, specifically to focus on issues serving the Black community. So that's a huge part of why I do this work. I'm related to slaves on Thomas Jefferson's plantation. I really like slavery, and understanding our history with slavery is what brings me a lot to this space. So I hope to study issues around, you know, mass incarceration, around Black maternal morbidity rates, especially issues affecting Black women, what we can do in an electoral sphere to help fix those things, but also like what we can't do and what we're outside of politics. I think I'm a little unique to go to graduate school from the campaign sphere. A lot of campaign people, it's like one of those jobs where, like, you don't have to go back to school. Like, you can work your way up, just getting your chops on a campaign. And so leaving to go to school, I had a little mixed feelings about, but I really wanted the graduate school time. I want to read books. I want to think deeply about issues. I want to take a break from what will have been my 9th campaign. You know, I gotta, like, step back. And I'm also interested in policy. Like, I've helped get all these people elected, and then I'm like, I don't even know how they do what we said we were going to do. Like, we go on the campaign trail saying we're going to do all this stuff, and then I have actually no idea how to execute on it or how it happens.
That's a whole nother episode.
Yep. And so I'm hoping this gives me some more color there.
Absolutely. That's super interesting.
Well, first of all, we cannot wait for you to be, like, diving in, hear all the learnings and takeaways, and we'll have to do, like, a post-grad episode as well. And, like,
wait, yeah, how long is it?
It's 2 years.
Okay.
2 years. Okay. Well, okay, for last question in this category, are you also going to be touching campaigns at all? Like, can you, like, resist the bug a little bit, or do you think you're still going to be like, finger in the pot, you know?
I think I'm trying to take a break, but I always get like pulled back in. I love campaigns, much like I feel like athletes love sports. I'm competitive. I love my candidates. When I do find one I like, I really, really like them and I support them and I want them to win. I think the good thing about school is I literally won't be able to give the time required.
Shackled.
Yeah, I literally like, and it's like gonna call me and I'm like, I'm in Massachusetts, bro. Like I can't help with your campaign in New York or Colorado or whatever. So I'm literally physically removing myself from some areas. But I think it will always be part of my life. I think there's a real chance after school I go back into it. I think there's a chance summer I do some more. It depends. You know, I hope the Democratic Party and I hope the nonpartisan electoral space continues to afford opportunities for people like me to remain interested and engaged, because we're having a little crisis of that too.
Totally.
Yes, and highly understandable. Highly. 10 out of 10. 1,000%. But nonetheless, thank you so much for coming on the show, running us through literally campaign 101, all the questions that we've had thus far. We will have more. So, like, you're coming back. Thank you.
But really nonetheless, want to talk about this, like, campaign policy promises to actually getting into office. I would love to have a conversation about that. So interesting.
Amazing. I'm here.
Where can people find you if they want to like follow your work and like see like what you're up to and all that stuff?
Yeah, I'd say I do most of my work related announcements and things on Twitter. So if you have a Twitter, I'd follow me. My first name, Drisana, Drisana, and then Hughes, Hughes there. But also my Instagram too, which I use to talk about a bunch of things, politics and me being a yoga teacher and all these other things that I do to cope in this like crazy time. But yeah, either of those are great. I always answer my DMs. I love to talk to people and hear about their ideas and thoughts. It takes a village to do all of this work. So I really enjoy the little community I've created.
Thank you so much. Hopefully too, for anyone listening who is interested in working in politics or in campaigns, this is super helpful for people. So thank you. We appreciate your time.
Thank you guys for doing what you do. It's important to spread the word about all of these things. So thank you.
Okay, kicking us off with top stories of the week. Another mass shooting. Highland Park, 6 people died and 2 dozen were injured in a mass shooting in another American city. This time it was in Highland Park, Illinois, which is a Chicago suburb. So the person of interest has been arrested, and the mayor of Highland Park said the suspect obtained his weapon illegally. He carried out his attack in a state that already had some of the nation's toughest gun laws, but is bordered by states where firearms are much easier to come by. I'm really glad that point was raised.
Yep.
So Highland Park Police Chief Lou Jogman, interesting name, said a police officer pulled the police officer pulled over Robert E. Crimo III about 5 miles north of the shooting scene. Authorities detained the suspect Monday evening in a traffic stop that led to a brief chase. Speaking outside the Highland Park Fire Station late Monday afternoon, Governor J.B. Pritzker decried the shooting, saying he spoke with President Joe Biden about it earlier. They both agree on one thing, Pritzker said. This madness must stop. Pritzker is in the middle of a re-election campaign. His GOP gubernatorial opponent, Darren Bailey, made a brief reference to the Highland Park massacre in a Facebook video, then declared, quote, "Let's move on and let's celebrate." Because this was on the 4th of July.
Like, I just
Embarrassing.
cannot.
You're an embarrassment.
Embarrassing is an understatement. That's that's like criminal. Okay.
Yeah. Bailey, a state senator, later apologized. He said, "I apologize if in any way we diminish the pain of being felt across our state today." Just these
apology just doesn't cut it.
These conservatives over the past few weeks with their absurd, like inhumane comments that have been made and then like trying to backtrack. I'm like, honestly, I'm like, I have no words. But over the weekend,
there's also obsession with guns. I really don't get it. I really don't get it. Like, we go into the abortion issue and I really understand the control, like the fucked up element of that. I really understand it. The guns element, yes, there's the money element, but there's like a level to it. Like, where does
it's like
it
the
stop?
parallels for both story or both issues are like
they're connected.
the people in power, it's all about control. But what they tell their base, for this is a portion, what they tell their base is like, but God, but Jesus. And then on the gun side, it's like the people in power are like, oh, well, we just make a fuck ton of money from guns, so we're going to make sure they stay. But they tell their base a different story, which is, you have this right to bear arms. You need it to protect yourself against the government. So the government and the people in power are telling you that they need to bear arms against them. Can we think about that too? They want to talk about conspiracy theories. I'm like, so why are the people that you are supposed to protect yourself from telling you or allowing you to have guns or having such a firm right to have guns?
It's just so whack.
Tell me how that makes sense. Tell me. But anyways, so over the weekend, 9 people were also shot to death in Chicago, with another 52 wounded. This was not just this mass shooting. And then authorities in at least a dozen other cities reported shootings over the weekend, most of them on Monday, on the 4th of July. So just the symbolism is strong.
It really is. And Lisai. So we do want to talk about a little bit of legislation in the area from my home state, New Jersey. Back in Jersey. Anyways, besides having great Italian food and every other food under the sun, New Jersey has a sweeping... It does. I'm telling you, it does. Fucking fantastic. Anyways, a sweeping package of legislation will make it more difficult to obtain a handgun license and buy high-capacity rifles in New Jersey, part of a patchwork effort by states with strict gun laws to work around a Supreme Court ruling aimed at dismantling them. On Tuesday, Governor Philip D. Murphy, signed the latest in what is expected to be a rush of state-level statutes intended to tighten firearm restrictions after last month's SCOTUS ruling, which overturned a New York State law, which, by the way, was like over 100 years old, that restricted how and where residents could carry handguns. The New Jersey bill is part of a collaborative effort between legislatures in New York and New Jersey. Wow, we do more together than just build tunnels. To coordinate gun-related legislation tailored to skirt the Supreme Court's ruling. Last week, Governor Kathy Hochul of New York announced the state's own version, which contains similar language and restrictions as the New Jersey bill. New York State legislators passed the bill in special session, or as many I saw call it, extraordinary session, on Thursday and Friday. Mm-hmm. Interesting. Well, I also saw recently this morning of potential 2024 Dem contenders is Phil Murphy, which I thought was interesting that he was like named amongst them. That often, especially at this point, doesn't necessarily even mean anything. And I honestly don't really see it. Like, I think he's personally great. Like, I'm a fan, but I don't feel like he has the national profile for it, like someone like a Newsom that's already out the gate. I'm so
interested to see what's going to happen in 2024. Like, I don't want to even go there yet, but I'm just like so interested. I'm like, is Biden even going to run? And if he is running, is there still going to be like a heavy like Democratic primary? Like, are the debate stages going to be full? Like, I'm just so curious.
Totally. I mean, I personally feel like there's no way that he's not going to get primaried the fuck out of. But it's just the Democratic Party never does. I mean, the Republicans don't either. Like, if they have a candidate, an incumbent already in there, like, they're not going to run people against them because that's historically the incumbent wins. He's just so freaking old.
I know. But that's why it's like, I think it would take him to like back out.
Yeah. Maybe. I don't know.
But then it's also like Trump could run. Like, it's going to be the most interesting year.
If it's like literally just a rematch, I'm going to be like livid. But I also don't like a rematch version where it's DeSantis and Trump.
I would love to see Gavin Newsom and Trump.
Biden.
Because I know like Gavin, like also, I have my problems with him, but like he also like he's great at clapbacks. He's a great public speaker. Like he's great at like he would own the fuck out of Trump. I feel like in a debate.
1,000%. He brings it. Mm-hmm. He absolutely brings it, and I'm here
really
for it.
Hot.
He is, and so is Joe Cunningham of South Carolina, who is running for governor.
Sorry, I don't want to say too much because I would love to have him on the show, and I don't want that like awkwardness of like me talking about how hot he is all the time, and then like potentially having him on the show or like talking to him one day and being like, "Oh, like, you know how hot I think you are." But
look, I get it.
Same with John Ossoff because like I'm manifesting that will happen one day.
However, more than anything, if you are a South Carolina listener, please go check out his candidacy, ASAP Rocky. Like, I don't know why you're still listening to us ramble. Like, please go look at his campaign ad.
No, he's going to be your new favorite influencer.
We're here for it. Absolutely. His ad, whoever is behind his ads and his campaign,
and his social media team.
Hit us up. We want to chat.
Yeah, we want to chat.
Big things.
We want to chat. Okay, well, next story. Some reproductive rights updates across the board. But kicking us off is a pretty dark and terrible story that really just shows how this SCOTUS decision is manifesting and will continue to manifest for girls and women all over the country. So a 10-year-old girl was denied an abortion in Ohio after the Supreme Court ruled last week that it was overturning Roe v. Wade, demonstrating the tangible impacts that the High Court's decision is having on patients seeking access to the medical procedure. A child abuse doctor in Ohio contacted Dr. Caitlin Bernard, a OBGYN in Indiana, after receiving a 10-year-old patient who was 6 weeks and 3 days pregnant. That patient is now heading west to Indiana, given that an abortion ban in Ohio, which prohibits the medical procedure when fetal cardiac activity begins around 6 weeks, had become effective quickly after the High Court issued its decision. But Indiana could soon find itself passing its own abortion law later this month, given that a special session has been scheduled for later in July, and the legislature is expected to touch on a ban on the medical procedure. Currently, abortion in Indiana is legal for up to about 20 weeks with some provisions for medical emergencies. Before an abortion, patients must undergo an 18-hour waiting period, and medical providers must tell patients about the risk involved in abortion and must say the fetus can feel pain around 20 weeks, which is not true. And yeah, I also want to note that this 10-year-old girl who was raped got pregnant, 6 weeks and 3 days pregnant, and the abortion ban is 6 weeks. So she was 3 days away from being able to receive that care.
Besides that, 6 weeks to know if you're pregnant or not is ridiculous in general, because so many people like literally don't know, like never had a regular period in my life. Like, why would I would have no idea. But a 10-year-old, again, does not matter the age, like this is a problem, but particularly someone that's 10 that may have just gotten their period for the first time a few times, like that's not regular. It's not at its like,
oh my God,
constant.
My period
like,
lasted a
let
month,
alone
my first one.
Oh my God.
No, like my period, well, I was just like spotting for like an entire month. I was like, what is going on?
Which bananas and sucks, but also like goes to show like that shit happens. Like I don't even know if I knew what a period was at age 10. I'm gonna be perfectly honest. What grade were we in?
No, that's early. That's so fucking early too.
Early.
Like that's so
really
sad.
But also it's like girls are getting their periods younger and younger these days. So like the fact that like that's also integrated into this as well.
I didn't know that. That's crazy.
Yeah. There's like a lot of theories out there of like, is it like what we're eating? Is it hormone? Like all of that stuff. But yeah, girls are getting it earlier and earlier.
10 is 5th grade. So you're not even in middle school yet.
Wait. 13 is bar mitzvah year. That was 7th grade.
It's like,
I always do it.
Yeah. Well, I was like 14.
It might be 4th grade even.
I was 14 my freshman year. So, or I turned 14 the end of my freshman year. So like 13, 12, 11. I don't know. I think it's like, it depends on the person. But.
Yeah. And probably state too. Like when you like.
Yeah.
Get cut. Yeah. Whatever the cutoff is.
So crazy. And so sad.
It's so insane. So insane.
And just.
Also, it's like, think about like a 10-year-old, like think about like how young that person is.
No, I literally can't. And I just watched the Netflix series about what is it, SLDS or whatever, the like Mormon fundamentalists in Utah. There's a whole like
I want to watch that
docu-series on that on Netflix right now, and how like the child brides and all that shit, and like they show some pictures of just like portraits of like the young like 13-year-old girls that are pregnant, and like just seeing that visual of like such a young girl with like a pregnant belly is the most disturbing one of the most disturbing things I've ever seen. Like it's just so crazy to me. But to shed, I guess, some like action item or just hope, or if there is any for this topic, but we had an IG Live today with Arizona for reproductive freedom, and they're in the midst of getting a petition signed to put reproductive freedom, really like women's health and just sexual health across the board on the ballot. So it's obviously women's right to choose, but it's a lot of other women's health initiatives. There's a TikTok on our page right now that kind of explains what states have this option of being able to collect signatures to put a piece of legislation on the ballot for voters to decide. It depends per state. I think there's 26 where it's like a direct democracy, like we want this on the ballot, get the petitions and it's on the ballot. There's also some where like you can get the petitions, but then, you know, it has to be approved by the state legislator to then be on the ballot. So it just depends. But you go check out our TikTok to learn more about that. But I think there's a few states, especially in like the Midwest, looking at like, this is Ohio and Indiana, where this is an option where you can get enough signatures and put a women's right to choose on the ballot for voters to decide this November. Some of those deadlines are approaching and maybe have passed as far as when you can do that for this year, but it is an option for 2024. Maybe there's special elections or something 2023. I doubt it. But just there's this option for some of these states that have really red GOP state legislators that there might be a pathway for your state to codify a woman's right to choose through direct democracy. But it depends on what your state constitution allows you to do. So go check that out. And listen to our IG Live. She also explains it. And if your state is one of those, our organization, Arizona for Reproductive Freedom, is also happy to answer questions and help other states get something like that started if it's an option for them. So
Flo Rida. Okay. Flo Rida's new 15-week abortion ban was blocked and then quickly reinstated Tuesday after an appeal from the state attorney general, a lawsuit challenging the restriction.
Attorney generals matter. Attorneys general, sorry.
Yes, they do.
Grammar, please. Attorneys general matter. They're on your ballot this year. Attorneys general.
In a lot of states. Judge John C. Cooper issued the order temporarily halting the law after reproductive health providers argued the state constitution guarantees the right to the procedure. The state appealed his order, automatically putting the law back into effect. Interesting. Okay, Mississippi. Update here. A judge held a hearing Tuesday, but didn't say how she would decide a lawsuit filed by Mississippi's only abortion clinic, just trying to remain open by blocking a law that would ban most abortions in the state. The law, which state lawmakers passed before SCOTUS overturned the 1973 ruling that allowed abortions nationwide, is set to take effect Thursday. The Jackson Women's Health Organization sought a temporary restraining order. Interesting how that's used. That would allow it to remain open, at least while the lawsuit remains in court. The clinic's lawsuit cites a 1998 Mississippi Supreme Court ruling that said the state constitution invokes a right to privacy that includes an implied right to choose whether or not to have an abortion. That state decision was rooted in SCOTUS in 1973 and 1992, decisions that established or protected abortion rights but were overturned on June 24th. In arguments filed Sunday, the state attorney's general's office said, oh, God, that's a mouthful, said the Mississippi Constitution does not recognize the right to abortion. The state has a long history of restricting the procedure. The lawsuit was filed 3 days after the Supreme Court overturned Roe in the case that originated in Mississippi. The clinic has continued to see patients, but owner Diane Durzis said it would close if the near ban on abortion takes effect.
So it's interesting just to see all the aftermath play out. This is all part of it, but I'm sure we'll see, more stuff and stories like this moving forward. But again, if you guys have questions or need action items, head to our Instagram. The Girl on the Gov, @GirlOnTheGov Instagram has action items galore, especially regarding reproductive freedom and abortion rights. So if you want to get involved, head there and follow us there, and we're always pushing that stuff out. So there's that on that. But that's it for this week. Hope you enjoyed. Join our brand ambassador program. You can go to girlonthegov.com and learn all about it and sign up. There's no requirements, and there's resume boosters, community of like-minded political ladies looking to take action and have impact, and networking opportunities in the political space, and more. So come join, especially in such a crucial election year with really dark shit happening on a daily basis in the news. Our brand ambassador program is a great way to take action and find some hope and less helplessness during this scary time. So go check it out. And that's about it. Subscribe, rate, review, follow us, or subscribe on YouTube.
And last thing, I am taking guesses for how many mosquito bites I currently have. And if you get it right, you get a Girl on the Gov sticker sheet.
I was going to say stickers are on their way out.
Although I only have one left. One left. We reordered. We did reorder. But they're not going to be in our hands till like mid-July. So just like FYI, we'll obviously put a story up for like more addresses, etc. then. But yeah, sorry, y'all love the stickers. So they're all going out. Besides, I literally have one sheet left. So whoever, like I said, guesses how many mosquito bites I have right now, you will be the lucky winner.
Yes, I love it. We got all your addresses, not in a creepy way, but to send stickers. And we have just like an amazing sheet too. Like me and Sam were just like so filled with joy that like the states, like we have you guys all over the place, and it's just really cool to see. And you guys are spreading that Girl in the Gov brand awareness all over the country. So thanks. And thanks for listening. But we'll be talking to you all next Wednesday.